The drum machine test video was very popular, so let's see what kind of follow-up you people want. Oh, so you want individual out sounds, eh? Okay, I can do that. That should be easy. Unless you forget to turn off the built-in compressor on the RD-9 and have to redo everything from the start. But fine, I did manage to record all the sounds from both the RD-9 and the TR-909 from both the individual outs and the main out with no compression or filtering. I also did it on all accent levels, and I uploaded the whole thing to SoundCloud if you want to listen for yourself. Link in the description. In the previous comparison between the RD-9 and the TR-909, I mentioned the output filters on the 909. Famous hardware modder Maffes reached out and said that in fact the RD-9 does have the 15 kHz filters on the individual outs. So the individual outs should sound very similar. So let us listen to a few drum sounds on the RD-9 and the TR-909 on the individual outputs. And yes, absolutely, on the individual outs, the RD-9 and my TR-909 sound very similar. Rumor has it that some TR-909s don't have the filters on the main outputs, but I haven't been able to confirm that. But those 909s should then sound very similar also on the main outs. But they are definitely missing from the RD-9, so it means that sounds on the RD-9 should sound exactly the same on the main outputs and on the individual outs. And I think they do, no surprise there. However, on the 909, at least my 909, most of them have these filters, so the main outputs should be a bit darker than the individual outputs. And indeed they are. Many people in the comments said they prefer the sound of the 909, but luckily there's an easy fix. Maffes has a mod for the RD-9 that adds a similar filter on the main RD-9 output. I will of course add a link in the description for that as well. But there's more. There's not just a filter that takes off the high end on the main out, there's actually a filter that takes off the bottom end as well. You maybe can hear it a little bit on the snare, maybe the low tom, maybe, but you can definitely hear it on the bass drum. So are there any differences between the sounds of my 909 and the RD-9? Well, yes there are. Of course, there's the rim shot. I mentioned that in the last video. The rim shot got a higher pitch on the third revision of the 909. But you can also hear how the tuning is different, and it's in fact impossible to get right. That's because each drum has several oscillators in them and they will not have the same pitches. So one drum will simultaneously be higher and lower in pitch. This is most notable on my machines in the high tom. But most of those differences will be there between different 909s as well. Behringer has to a very large extent just copied the original circuitry from the 909 and therefore created a very accurate clone sound-wise. But there is one major difference, and that's when it comes to the accents. The Roland TR-909 has accented versions of the bass, snare, toms and the closed hi-hat. In addition to that, it has a global accent. If you adjust the global accent button carefully, that means you can get 4 evenly spaced volume levels for these sounds. No accent, global accent, local accent, and both accents. This was probably meant to help with realism, but is more useful to pretend that you have a delay. Or maybe you just want to go crazy. Björk style. But this doesn't work for, say, the hand clap. There you only get 2 levels, no accent and global accent. But on the RD-9, all sounds have local accent, so all sounds have 4 levels, and that's a nice improvement. Both the RD-9 and the TR-909 are also velocity sensitive via MIDI. Yeah, the TR-909, the first MIDI drum machine, is velocity sensitive via MIDI. Another weird detail in the TR-909 design is that the snare and the hand clap are using the same noise source, but as a quirk of that design, they're using it out of phase. That means that if you have a hand clap and a snare hit at the same time, you get a weird phasing sound. Did you hear how that second hand clap was darker and had a kind of sound to it? Let's listen to that again. And the RD-9 faithfully reproduces this. But another weird detail in the TR-909 design is that the main outs have their phases reversed compared to the individual outs, which means that if you take one of the sounds from the individual outs and the other from the main out, the phasing disappears. But this does not happen on the RD-9. Because the main out on the RD-9 is not phase reversed compared to the individual outs. I actually saw a claim that mentioned that this was fixed from the RD-8, which apparently has the same issue, that the main out is phase reversed from the individual outs. I have no idea if the original TR-8 also has this sort of phase reversing, but the 909 definitely has. But this means that on the TR-909 you can choose to have the phasing or not, depending on if you use individual outs for the snare and clap or not. Some like the sound, some do not. But on the RD-9 you can't. You will always get the phasing unless you intentionally phase reverse one of those sounds in the mix. So that's all I have about the individual outputs. Originally I had intended to include information about the timings as well, but this video took a lot longer to do than I thought. So I'm gonna push this out now and do the timings for another video. See you then!